assume as President of Kenya.
William Ruto only narrowly won Kenya's 2022 presidential election. Although a member of the country's political establishment and a former deputy president for nearly a decade, he said he was different. A hustler on the side of the poor. He said he had a bottom-up plan promising employment for the youth and an end to decades of corruption and mismanagement. People were killed on Tuesday in violent protests against his finance bill that included heavy tax increases. An analyst says these protests are different and go beyond Kenya's traditional political divides.
What he's facing now is a different kind of challenge, because the challenge now is demographics. And Generation Z does not have class, does not have tribe, does not. So they have this large group of very young people who seem to be impossible to split.
During a pomp and ceremony-filled state visit to the United States last month, and the first by an African leader in 15 years, US President Joe Biden said there is a bright light at the White House. He designated Kenya a major non-NATO ally. But Ruto's past is checkered, to say the least. He was accused of orchestrating a campaign of political violence against ethnic groups that killed 1,300 people following disputed elections in 2007.
We are in open session now.
In 2016, the International Criminal Court dropped the case against him, citing witness interference and intolerable political meddling. Believed to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, he has over the years been repeatedly accused of involvement in the murder of political opponents and many land grabs. And Ruto's finance bill has created fury across the country and a determined protest movement led by the young.
Almost everybody in the country believes that he lies and that he can't walk out of that. Almost everybody in the country believes he's corrupt. He can't walk out of that. So it's not clear where he's going to quote his next support from.
Ruto was forced to refuse to sign off on the new tax law, saying he conceded Kenyans wanted nothing to do with it. A new generation of protesters in Kenya may have won this battle, but there's little indication their president will seriously address their wider grievances. Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Let's bring in Reginald Kadzutu. He's an associate lecturer at Oxford Brookes University and a financial economist. He joins us now from Oxford. So, Reginald, the finance bill has obviously been put aside, but where does Ruto go from here when you see this level of anger and disillusionment? And as we've been reporting, this is a grassroots movement driven by the youth. What are his options now?
His options are narrowing by the day. The longer he takes to comprehensively come out and address this generation and address these protesters who are protesting on things that genuinely affect them. Not along party lines, not along tribal lines, but basic things that affect the wider part of the population. The protests themselves, I think, have done a lot of damage on Ruto's reputation or type of image he has been trying to build for himself over the last 2 years with all his frequent trips, photo ops with the who's who in this world. But the response, he responded to peaceful protesters, headshots, people being killed, people being abducted, has tarnished that. So I think his options are narrowing and his international support is also changing. He might find himself in a situation where he is isolated.
Well, Reginald, there's obviously been heavy criticism of some of the choices he's made, the level of force used by the police and the army. Will there be accountability for what's happened in the last few days?
I doubt. What was shocking was the video where he was saying he is the most incompetent inspector general of police in the world. And I'm thinking that's not something that should come from the president who appointed that same IG. As in, he is telling the world that he made a wrong choice in putting the person who he put as the inspector general of police. I found that a bit embarrassing and shameful. Is there going to be any repercussions on the police or on any military person? I don't think so, because prior to the protests on Tuesday, he came out saying the police have the right to defend themselves and they will use any force that is possible. And if you see how Nairobi looks like today from the images we are seeing and the videos we are seeing, it looks like a state in a civil war, with military roaming the streets, coming in and out of their barracks, roads barricaded. He is marooned in State House, surrounded by police around. I don't think that can continue for a long time. So, but I don't think there will be real accountability where we'll see people paying for the deaths, proven by all international media that they are from gunshot wounds from the police. Yeah.
Are we perhaps now seeing an inflection point of sorts in Kenyan politics and society? We've seen movements and protests beyond urban centres, for instance. Does this change the political landscape enough to threaten Ruto's hold on power?
The interesting thing about these protests this time around, they're not centered in the usual places, Nairobi, Kisumu, or the opposition strongholds. They are everywhere, including his own strongholds, even larger in his own strongholds. Whether we reach an inflection point depends on the sustainability and the consistency of the protesters coming out. If they're going to do this every day and he has to shut down the country like this every day, it will reach a point in time where pressure will not only come from the protesters, but might start coming from his business associates, because businesses are not open from the region, for fearing for a contingent effect going around, and from his developmental partners in the West who value democracy and human rights more than anything. So once pressure starts coming from those angles, I think he might have to double down on a lot of things, which will hurt his chances of re-election in 2027.
Very interesting times in Kenya, certainly. Reginald Kadzutu there, an associate lecturer at Oxford Brookes University. Thank you so much for joining us on the News Hour, Reginald.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.